Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with deviled blondies. That's right, I was going to post these a little bit closer to Halloween, but these were just too good not to share immediately. And I kind of knew these were going to be amazing, since the idea is based on a recent viral cookie video we posted, which got rave reviews, and I think I might even like these better. And to get started, we will take a couple tablespoons of brown sugar and add it to a tablespoon of room temp butter, along with the star of the show, and also the devil in these details, a generous tablespoon of Korean chili paste, which goes by the name Gochujang, or as many people prefer to pronounce it, Gochujang. And all we have to do here is mix, mash, and smear this all together until we formed a nice smooth paste, at which point we'll simply reserve that at room temp until we need it. And then once that's set, we can move on to something a little less exciting. We'll go ahead and mix up our dry ingredients, which is just going to be some all-purpose flour, to which we add some salt and baking powder. And that's it. We'll take a whisk and give this a quick mix until we have everything evenly combined. And as I so often do, to make this a little more exciting and much, much more difficult, I used a nice small bowl. And once mixed, we can set that aside and move on to the last thing we should prep before we start the batter. And that would be to grease a 9x9 cake pan. Plus, to hedge our bets, I also like to add a square of buttered parchment paper on the bottom, which will make removing the blondies stress-free. And that's it. Once our pan is prepped, we can actually start the batter, which will begin with a little touch of white sugar, as well as some brown sugar, which once mixed together, of course, makes blonde sugar. We are also going to want to toss in a couple large eggs, plus a generous splash of real pure vanilla extract, at which point we'll take a whisk or an electric hand mixer, and we will mix this until it's thick and smooth. And once that's happened, and our mixture looks a little something like this, we will stop, and we will add some melted butter, which, by the way, shouldn't be piping hot. So melt it ahead of time and let it cool down a little bit. And then we'll take our mixer again and blend this one more time until we produce something beautifully smooth and fully emulsified. And yes, in case you're wondering, we could have added our melted butter in the first step, which I have done in other similar recipes. But sometimes when you do that, the butter kind of splashes out when you first start mixing. So I feel like adding it at this point is just a little bit safer and easier. And that's it. Once we're happy with how that looks and feels, we will stop. And we will add some macadamia nuts, or of course the nuts of your choice. And then we'll also dump in our flour mixture, and then switch to a spatula, and then carefully fold and mix this together just until the flour disappears. And I realize that adding some kind of chip to a blondie recipe, whether that's butterscotch or some kind of chocolate, is very popular. But Michelle and I tested this with and without, and we both agreed we like this better without the chips. But anyway, when it comes to adding those to a blondie, that's going to be up to you. I mean, you are, after all, the Dagwood of whether or not you should. But either way, like I said, we will mix this only until the flour disappears, and then we will stop mixing and clean down the sides, at which point we'll take this and transfer it into our prepared pan. And generally for a nice thick batter like this, the best strategy is to plop it all in the center. And then once it's all been transferred in, we'll use our spatula to push from the center into the corners. And then eventually we will smooth out the top to form a nice even layer. And while it is true our batter will even out as it bakes, since we're just about to add our devilish design to the top, we're going to want to make this as uniform as possible. And once that's been accomplished, we can grab our Gochujang chili sugar mixture, and we can start transferring that on top. And I originally thought I was going to cut this into 12 pieces, so I decided to start my design by doing 12 dollops. But if we wanted, another method that would work would be to transfer this into a piping bag, and we could use that to pipe lines across the top, or whatever design we wanted. But anyway, as you can see, I simply used a spoon to make 12 dollops on top, at which point I grabbed a knife so I could use the tip to make the final design. And what I wanted to do with each one of these was shape it into like a devil's face with the horns and the goatee. Oh yeah, they say one of the first things you notice when you get to hell is all the goatees. But then I remembered, I don't know how to do that. So instead I went with this sort of abstract, fires of hell design, or as they call it in the brochure, the flames of eternal damnation. But no matter what design you go with, we definitely want to push some of that sugar chili mixture down into the batter. And when we're finished, The top should be about 50-50 between our red streaks and our blonde batter, which is pretty much what I've achieved here. And that's it. Before this is baked, we'll give it the old tappa, just to settle that batter down. And if you're using a glass dish, make sure you do that on a towel. And once tapped, it's ready to transfer into the center of a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 35 minutes, or until it looks like this, which is very beautiful, and it looks done. But we should probably test to be sure with a skewer. And please be careful where you poke. Okay, make sure you test a light part, since if you poke it into the chili component, it's going to be hard to tell. But if you go into a batter-only part, it should come out clean. And mine did, which means it's cooked perfectly. And that's it. We now come to the most difficult part of the whole recipe, where we need to let this cool completely before we remove it from the pan. I mean, you can remove it a little bit warm, but it might crumble apart. And also, warm blondies don't taste that good, and the texture's wrong. So please let it cool all the way down before you try to remove it. And if everything goes according to plan, that should come out easily with no issue. And as I mentioned before, I was going to cut this into 12 pieces, but I changed my mind and decided to go with 9, which I just thought was a more devilish number than 12. Plus, if we do 9, our blondies are bigger. So there's also that. And that's it. Once cut, I grabbed one and went in for a bite. And I'll get to the incredible flavors in a minute. But that, my friends, texturally speaking, was an absolutely perfect blondie. Right, those outside edges were nice and crisp, with the rest of the blondie being moist and chewy. And also, and this is very important, we achieved that moist and chewy interior without undercooking the batter. Right, anybody can make moist, chewy brownies and blondies by undercooking it, but that's not as good a chewiness as a properly cooked chewiness. So please test for doneness carefully, and don't be tempted to pull these out of the oven too soon. And then as far as the taste goes, just a regular macadamia blondie would be incredible. But when you combine that sweet heat element, especially one using a nice fermented Korean chili paste, you have something that rises up to a whole new level of deliciousness. And if you like those Gochujang Caramel Cookies we did, you are definitely going to love these. Oh, and one last thing regarding the temperature. As I said, you should let these cool all the way down before you cut and serve them. But for maximum enjoyment, it is highly recommended to refrigerate these first before you serve them. In fact, that is the only way my wife Michelle will enjoy these. And I think we need to trust her, since she was the one that actually came up with the idea for these blondies. But anyway, whether you eat these cold or at room temp, these will, without a doubt, be one of the best blondies you've ever had, which is why we really do hope you give them a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.